Not ideal, Mets fans. Not ideal. Just when you thought, okay, you know what? The Mets aren't going to be without guys like Manaea and Frankie Montas too long before returning this Mets rotation. And bam, in a very Metsian fashion, especially on the pitching front, which feels like it's inevitable every single year, we come to find out that the Samoan Southpaw and Manaea has had a setback, and he is not going to be returning any earlier, more than likely, than around the same time as his former teammate turned teammate again now, and Frankie Montas. How you doing, everybody? Even though I already know the answer to that as you're chiming into our Breaking Mets news segment right now that I am not at all interested in getting into, but we have to get into. We're going to hear from Carlos Mendoza, Mets skipper, in a second as to this evaluation. Ultimately, what is now next for the Mets with a key injury to the rotation sustained and looking like it's getting worse before it's now getting better? Should the Mets add externally to this rotation? Should they consider some kids in the farm right now that balled out in either spring training or this past year in the minor leagues or so? That is what we're going to get into, everybody. So let me see your initial reactions down below, as always, as we are just now, a couple hours away from tonight's Game 2 matchup between the Mets and the Marlins, and we're going to be live for a watch party in that game in which you guys can actually watch and listen to the actual game in real time with me live in the Playback app at playback.tv/WardyNYM, link down below, and all you guys need to have is a MLB TV subscription to partake. That way you guys will get some of my commentary, but you can tune me out if you want to listen to more of the game and just see my reactions and interact in the chat, whatever you want to do. And it's going to be simulcasted on YouTube, so in case you don't have an MLB TV subscription and can join Playback with us later, you guys can still watch live on YouTube. The only difference is that it'll be a scoreboard because I can't obviously show the game actively happening for copyright infringement reasons. So folks, let's get into this one, but before we do, just a quick shout out to our amazing sponsor here at BetUS TV. As you guys see, they have you covered with all the latest picks and lines, and right now the Mets heading into tonight's Game 2 matchup, Kodai Senga, Sandy Alcantara, the biggest pitching matchup on paper this series, and they are -1.5 on the run line and -1.5, -105 there that we see for the first 5 innings. So check them out, BetUS TV, everybody. We appreciate having them because I know that's an easy hammer, especially for the Mets. I understand that it's kind of, I shouldn't say a ballsy take, but certainly an interesting one when Kodai Senga, we don't know how much length we're going to get out of him. And in the case of Sandy Alcantara, far from shocked if he'll go out and dominate against the Mets across 6 or 7 innings, because when he's right, when he's healthy, he's a bulldog, and we know he's coming back from injury now. But let's get into this news that we all saw from Carlos Mendoza, Mets skipper himself, just over the past hour, folks. Buckle up.
And you know when Manaea might throw a bullpen?
Yeah, no, he's not going to throw. He experienced some discomfort a couple of days ago while he was, starting to ramp up. We took an MRI again and showed inflammation, so he got a PRP injection yesterday. So he's not throwing for 2 weeks now. So, yeah.
So this pushes him back probably till mid to late May, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. Because he's gonna go 2 weeks of not throwing, and then we gotta start building him back up again.
And
what frustrates me more than anything else by far is the fact that this is an oblique injury. And what is the main thing you're supposed to never do with an oblique injury? It's to rush back. Now, I understand Sean was cleared to a degree, so he got all clearance from everybody to start ramping up and throwing, but maybe they should have just been a little bit more precautious, a little bit more cautionary to begin with, because obliques are such a fluke injury to happen. When you're having any muscle issue, especially in your oblique range, as a pitcher, it can really fluctuate in how fast or how slow the rehab process is, the healing process. And let's not forget when Max Scherzer had to go through with the Mets throughout a good chunk of his one only solid year with the Mets, if you're excluding where he got rocked by the Padres in the wild card, and sadly I was in attendance for that game. If you exclude all that, we know that the obliques are a very finicky thing, especially when you look at pitchers. So now that Manaea, the Samoan Southpaw, is not returning to this rotation any earlier than, at absolute best case scenario, end of May, but it'll more than likely be in the first week or so of June. Maybe him and Frankie Montas arrive around the same time in that series in LA against the Dodgers. That could be a potential, but at the same time, do you want them to make their debuts in LA against against the Dodgers, one, and secondly, it just isn't ideal to see this whatsoever. And of course, now it's both Manaea and Montas, who were supposed to be two of our biggest innings eaters this year, and now we're going to have to further heavily rely on the likes of not only Clay Holmes, but Griffin Canning, Tyler McGill, and now that he's coming back from injury very soon, Paul Blackburn, because Blackburn will be back with this Mets team ASAP in that swingman role, and he will definitely be eating a bulk of innings for the Mets should one of our key starters maybe not have a strong start especially. But how do the Mets go about the rotation going forward now, everybody? Well, obviously, we've learned by now that as much as we may like a little bit more of a knee-jerk reaction from the front office to make a big splash for a pitcher, that it is rarely going to come, if ever going to come, in a desperation fashion. The Mets don't feel that they're in any need whatsoever to rush for pitching. They will only do it if they get to a point where either A, more injuries occur, and yes, this is the frustrating part because they much rather, like most organizations, do this thing where until they know they absolutely have to make a move, they decide to not make a move. And that's what frustrates me about when you not only have, it's good to have the amount of depth that the Mets have had in their rotation for the most part, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you have an abundance of it. Does this mean that a guy like Jose Urena may be considered a little bit as a multi-inning guy for them, not only as a reliever, but as a swingman type too, that they acquired? That was a late signing from the Rangers last year, who as a reliever at least posted a sub-3 ERA across like 64 and 2/3 innings. And I apologize, everybody. My contact is actively acting up right now, but the show must go on here on WardyNYM. So now that the Mets are without Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas, I'd imagine what they're going to do, at least for the time being. Oh my goodness gracious, was that a little hair or something? Come on, we're live in real time. Wardy's getting all messed up here. What I can tell you is that now that Sean is not coming back until earliest June, David Stearns is not going to act desperately. But again, if the Mets find themselves where the quality of the rotation is not working out, let's say worst case scenario, Clay Holmes, Tyler McGill, Griffin Canning aren't going beyond 5 or so innings for the next month, and that's a big problem. Again, not that I'm wishing it, but I'm just saying let's just assume a lot of different things go wrong here. If that's the case, then how do the Mets act? Well, Brandon Sproat, we saw at least throughout his first start in Syracuse, did not look good. Velo was down. He has a lot more working to do, so Sproat will be positively impacting this Mets team, but the question is when this year, not so much if. Blade Tidwell, who I think profiles better as a reliever type for this Mets team than an actual starter, went out and shoved against Marcelo Mayer and a tremendous Red Sox minor league affiliate. So it's going to be interesting to evaluate internally what the Mets consider, because another guy that they're stretching as a multi-inning reliever slash starter, and Justin Hageman, got rocked in his first outing, which was against that same Red Sox affiliate. He gave up, I believe, 5 earned runs across 3 innings or so. So not ideal to begin things by any stretch. And I understand it's AAA, so AAA doesn't necessarily mean the same success. Maybe you're going to have more success at the MLB level. And Luis Angel Acuna is a great example of that from what we've seen so far in his limited MLB sample sizes versus what he's done in his sample size for the most part there in AAA Syracuse. But to suggest the Mets are going to go out of their way to make an external move right now, it just isn't going to happen as much as we'd like to see it. But it definitely does make you wonder, make you question, are the Mets going to be more inclined to pick up someone either? I can't see being in the free agency front at this point, because anyone that gets signed needs to be properly ramped up. It would only make sense for someone via trade that's been properly ramped up this year and maybe is on a team that is not going anywhere this year, like they could swing a really surprise trade for. We know that obviously Shooting for the Stars has been going for trades for teams like the Seattle Mariners and a Luis Castillo type, but that isn't really going to happen unless the Mets give up a lot of talent that can impact the team positively for them right now. And it's hard to envision that, knowing that both of them are competing heavy for a playoff spot this season. So Mets fans, I want to hear from you. What do you think is the best course of action for the Mets with Sean Manaea? There's Simone Southpaw down until earliest, probably the beginning of June, right around the same time as Frankie Montas, barring changes. And ultimately, do you think the Mets will be staying internal and hoping that the guys handle things well, where I do think this pitching staff can handle itself enough from now up until north of June, but I think there's a lot of risk involved, and that is where we're going to have to go through the trials and tribulations of considering people in the farm that we otherwise wouldn't. Maybe we're rushing someone when we otherwise shouldn't be doing. So it's going to be fascinating to follow, but sadly a wrinkle thrown in to the already abundance of injuries that the Mets have had with their rotation to begin the year. Same injury, but a reoccurring one, and one that sets you back where you shut down for 2 weeks, is not ideal for us Mets fans or Sean Manaea. But guys, that is going to do it for our latest breaking news Mets segment. Thank you so much again for checking out. Let me know all your initial reactions in the comments down below on Sean Manaea going down with injury, and stay tuned again for our watch party simulcasted live on YouTube. And to actually watch the Mets game itself and listen to it should you wish, you can toggle what you want to listen to and the audio levels and all that stuff in the playback app by going to playback.tv/WardyNYM. Link down below. Check it out, and I'll see you guys later tonight. Peace out, folks.